Hello guys. I'm here again to accompany your time with a cool movie storyline. This time, I pick up an adventure drama film that was released in 2000, adapted from the novel of the same name by Alex Garland. The Beach tells the story of a backpacker from America named Richard, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, on an adventure to a beautiful beach, and there is also a marijuana plantation. At first, the adventure was fun, but over time it became an experience that threatened his life. Wow, that's scary too. How's the fun of the movie? Want to know? Before I continue, I want to ask you to like, comment and share videos from this channel. Don't forget to subscribe so I can be more enthusiastic about uploading other videos. Alright. The film opens with Richard. He is an American. One day, Richard was bored and he traveled to Bangkok to entertain himself by visiting the beaches there. To start his new adventure, he must drink the blood of a snake. This is a challenge for backpackers who have just arrived. The scene changes to Richard's inn. Before entering his room, Richard coincidentally met a couple who were also on vacation, just like him. Well, when Richard was sleeping in his room, he heard a male voice screaming. The man also greeted Richard from the air vent in Richard's room. He happened to be in the room next door to Richard. When Richard tried to climb into the vent, the men also climbed into the vent, and they chatted with each other. The man shared the pot of marijuana he smoked with Richard. The man also told Richard that there was a very beautiful beach, but it was kept secret. The island is not included in the list of tourist destinations for tourists. He also said that only a few people had gone there, and they kept it a secret, but at that time Richard thought that the person's story was a hoax and thought that the person was crazy. The next morning, when Richard returned to the inn, he found a piece of paper on his door. When opened, it turns out that the paper is a map showing the location of the coast of the island that was told last night by Richard's roommate. Then Richard went to the person's room. He was surprised because there was a lot of blood spilled in his room and found that the person who told him last night had died by suicide. That person's name is Daffy Duck. Richard, who was shrouded in curiosity about the existence of the secret beach, Richard then told and invited the couple he had met earlier. The couple are French citizens named Etienne and Françoise. Since they were all fellow adventurers craving something new, they were immediately enthusiastic about Richard's invitation. The three of them prepared everything needed, from tickets, departure schedules and all other supplies needed to go to the beach indicated by the map. The journey is quite far, so they have to change means of transportation. When they arrived at a tourist spot, Etienne told them that no boat would take them to the island because the island is a national park and is forbidden to visit. Because of that, they decided to stay overnight and swim in the morning to reach the island. When he was about to enter the inn, Richard was annoyed that he had lost his room key. But his room neighbors chatted with him and offered him a beer, and of course accompanied by a roll of marijuana. The two of them also told Richard that they had heard there was a beautiful beach and its location was kept secret. This archipelago is a hidden dream beach with white sandy beaches and crystal clear waters. And the best part, there is also a lot of marijuana plants that they can smoke every day. The next day, Richard made a copy of the map and then placed it under the door of the two new friends' bedrooms. Their journey was continued again to the island, which was delivered by boat. Then, in the morning, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise decided to swim towards the beautiful island. The three of them struggled to swim to get to the island. On the way, Richard panicked because Etienne told him that Françoise was missing. Richard thinks that Françoise was attacked by a shark. When Richard really panicked, then Françoise came to the surface and was right in front of Richard with a smile. Apparently it was done by Françoise and Etienne as a form of joke to Richard. He was nagging because he was joking. Then the three of them swam back to the dream island. Tired struggle. Finally, they arrived at the island, but just as they started to explore the island, they were surprised by a very large marijuana field. Then the three of them laughed happily. As Etienne and Françoise run into the middle of the field, Richard accidentally sees a monkey, which belongs to a sleeping marijuana farmer. It was also seen that the marijuana farmer was carrying a weapon. Richard panicked. He immediately rushed to find Etienne and Françoise. Fortunately, the three of them managed to escape the observation of the farmers who were on patrol. After that, they went along the river to find the whereabouts of the beach. But their steps stopped when they were at the waterfall. When Richard and Etienne argued about the solution to the problem of how to get through the waterfall, then Françoise, with her courage, jumped and managed to get down to the bottom safely. Then after that, Richard and Etienne also jumped down the waterfall. Not long after, there was a man who was on the ground, applauding the three of them for having dared to jump over the waterfall. The man's name is Keaty. He is one of the backpacker communities who live there and invites Richard, Etienne, and Francoise to meet other friends from various countries who live there. Then the three of them also met Sal. Sal is the woman who became the leader of the community. Richard gives the map he got from Daffy. Sal also said that Daffy was one of the founders of this community. But somehow, Daffy then became stressed. Sal also asked the three of them if anyone else knew about this map besides the three of them, then they said no. Even though Richard actually lied to protect himself, and finally the map was burned by Sal to erase evidence of the existence of the place. After that the three of them were invited by everyone there to a place. And as it turned out, it was a beach that was said to have a very beautiful view. The three of them were really amazed by the beauty of the beach. Sal then took them around and explained that, after finding this place, they founded a community and built a settlement together for years. They made the place so that its authenticity was maintained and occasionally went to the city to sell a little marijuana, then the money was used to buy necessities of life such as rice and clothes. In short, Francoise, who turned out to also have a crush on Richard, while other friends were having fun, including Etienne, Francoise took Richard to the beach that night. And they expressed their feelings to each other, that they like each other. But it was hidden from Etienne. The next day, Etienne told Richard that he was willing to give up Francoise for Richard for Francoise's happiness. Richard was surprised to hear that. Apparently, the secret between Francoise and Richard was already known by Etienne and his friends there. Since then Richard and Francoise have been openly making out in front of their friends. One time, Sal invited Richard to go to town to buy the needs of all his community friends. Long story short, they arrived in the city. Unintentionally, Richard's friend whom he shared a copy of the map to the Dream Beach came to him. And they also said that they would try to go to the island that Richard informed. Because Sal was there, Richard lied that the beach never existed. Because Richard's friends were still discussing about the existence of the beach, with a bit of annoyance, Richard shouted at them and chased them away. Sal heard it. While they were alone, Sal interrogated Richard about the map he gave to his friend. But at that time Sal still forgave Richard. The next day, after they had finished buying everything they needed, then Sal and Richard rushed back to the secret island, where they now live. After arriving at the settlement, Richard immediately distributed to all his friends the necessities they had left when they went to town. Richard then met Francoise. Francoise bought a disposable camera by Richard. Then when Richard wanted to kiss Francoise, Francoise asked what Richard and Sal were doing in town. Are they in a relationship? Richard assures Francoise that he did nothing with Sal while in town, even though Richard lies to protect himself and his relationship with Francoise. When they all went about their respective activities, there they were surprised by some of their friends who like fishing were attacked by sharks. Sten dies torn apart by the shark attack. Meanwhile, Christo was injured in his left leg. Long story short, Sten was buried there. And Christo settled in the settlement with his injuries getting worse. Because they all started to get annoyed with Christo's screams of pain, then Sal and his other friends moved Christo to the middle of the forest and let him. However, there is Etienne who remains faithful to visit and care for Christo in the middle of the forest. The scene changes again. Sal suddenly wakes Richard and invites him to leave. There were 4 of Richard's friends when he met in the city, seen already across the island, heading for the beach they were occupying now. Sal asks Richard to stay in the forest, monitor the movements of the 4 friends, and sees a copy of the map that Richard has made. In the evening, Francoise comes to Richard and is angry with him. Francoise already knew what Richard had done with Sal while in town. Long story short, Richard's 4 American friends arrived at the island. They were all happy because they found a large marijuana field. But unfortunately, the 4 of them were caught by cannabis farmers and they were all killed one by one. Meanwhile, Richard, who saw the incident, then ran towards the settlement. He who cannot stand the life and activities of the people on the island, Richard also invites Francoise and Etienne to leave the location because the situation is increasingly endangering their lives. Long story short, the cannabis farmers came to the backpacker community settlement and met Sal. The leader of the cannabis growers was furious and showed him a copy of the map brought by one of Richard's 4 American friends. He also asked all of them in the settlement to leave because they had violated the previous agreement, which was not to add more people to the settlement. But in fact, information about the existence of the island was leaked then, because Sal is determined to stay there. The leader of the marijuana farmer gives Sal a gun to shoot Richard if he really wants to stay. Sal did too. When the atmosphere turned increasingly tense, Sal was desperate to pull the trigger of the gun. Luckily, The bullet was empty. Richard was relieved that he was still alive. Due to this incident, they all chose to leave the island rather than putting their lives at risk. Long story short, they all returned to their real lives and resumed normal lives. Richard, who had not opened his email for a long time, also received many messages in his email, starting from his mother, friends, and also from Françoise. The content of Françoise is in the form of photos when they are at the beach. Then, Richard smiled as he remembered when he was at the dream beach. And the movie is over. Well, until here first, the storyline of the movie that I shared. If you have other movie recommendations, don't hesitate to write them in the comments column, okay? Thank you for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.